Hello and welcome to another episode of Stories from the Toy Shelf Unscripted. And this time we're back to GI Joes. So, like any modern GI Joe collector, I started out with the Real American Hero line, the 3.75-inch figures. And when they were revived in the 25th anniversary, I also went all in on that. But eventually that came to an end as well. And for the longest time, my G.I. Joe collection remains stagnant. That is until Hasbro announced a new 6-inch classified line. And as amazing as those figures look, I kind of resisted because I already had such a huge collection of 25th anniversary G.I. Joes, and I just couldn't justify restarting another G.I. Joe collection. But when Super 7 announced their own take on a larger Joe action figure, their Super 7 Ultimates GI Joe line, which they said would go for the cartoon aesthetic. And so, given that Super 7 had a unique approach to GI Joe, they would focus on the toon aesthetic. I figured it would be worth checking out. And yeah, I know Ultimates tend to cost a lot more, practically double of what a regular classified figure would go for. But Super 7 is also known for having a very slow release schedule. We're looking at maybe 4 figures a year, 8 tops. So I figured, despite the extra cost, it was worth looking into and checking out. And eventually, when the first figure came out, I went for it and was completely sold. And so here I am talking about my Super 7 Ultimates GI Joe collection. All right, so Super 7 GI Joe Ultimates. So the line, it all started with this guy. This guy, the Bat, he wasn't actually part of the first official wave. This guy was more of I think he was an SDCC exclusive that was launched earlier and came out in Big Bad Toy Store. But anyway, I figured my excitement was at an all-time high by this point. I decided to just go for it and check him out. So, first impressions, I was pretty impressed. I mean, yes, he's pretty big, and I guess right off the bat, that's one of my major gripes of this line is that the figures, compared to other Super 7 characters, are kind of tall. I mean, granted, they're not supposed to have the physique of He-Man or any of the Masters of the Universe, but I would have liked them to be a little bit smaller. This bat is actually big for a G.I. Joe Ultimate period, but in general, the basic size scale, they just don't fit in with most of the other Ultimates like the Silverhawks and whatnot. So anyway, yeah, but that being said, as a line of its own, this was a pretty impressive debut. Typical of Super 7, the articulation isn't much to write home about. I mean, it's got your basic articulation. This, if you're wondering why the bat is this color, it's based on the comic look of the bat. So in the comics, the colors are more muted, so they came out sort of blue rather than black. He also comes with the traditional bat backpack with all the switchable weaponry for his arms. These are removable and switchable. But he also came with this extra one, which I guess was something that came from the cartoon. It's a spore tank. So it comes with like these spores, or are they mines? I'm not sure. I don't really remember. But anyway, it's an option, right? But as he is, typical Super 7, I mean, articulation's limited, but the detailing is pretty good. You're not going to be posing your bat in any extreme poses anyway, so it works. And so he was a good introduction, and he got me really excited for the first wave of Ultimates. So let's get going with the first wave. So the first wave, let's get the obvious one out of the way first, and that would be the regular flavored bat. So this is basically what we saw from the original, well, I mean, in the cartoon, and what we usually see the bat as a predominantly black trooper with yellow webbing, web gear. He's got the traditional armaments in the back, but basically he's just a straight up repaint, or this is the straight up repaint of the regular release. The heads are unique with the black bat, or the OG bat, looking more rounded, I guess. I actually remember his visor being silver as well, but I guess in the cartoon it wasn't. And yeah, as far as accessories go, I'll just put a picture here on the side. He came with a rifle, a broken bat arm, some more, switch out parts. But basically, this is all you really need from the regular bat. And so, Battle Android Trooper. The second figure would be this guy, Snake Eyes. And this, when you talk about toon aesthetic, this is pretty much what it means. Because this is Snake Eyes from the very first mini-series of G.I. Joe. And while it's based on the original Snake Eyes Commando, he looked really different from the toy. So yeah, this is the Snake Eyes we saw in the cartoon. He went on that hunt for those radioactive crystals, so that's a canister that he has. And the cartoon where he met Timber. And this is a pretty cool sculpt of Timber. It is articulated, but the articulation doesn't really matter. So if I were Super 7, I would have just made him a, because it doesn't really do much. So they might as well have saved some money and made him a static piece, because he basically just stands right next to Snake Eyes. So this guy came with a jetpack, the standard rifle that all the GI Joes came with, and a walkie-talkie and stuff. But yeah, this is your basic cartoon Snake Eyes. I don't know, some people might not find this version or this look pretty cool, but I like it because I really love that miniseries, and this is what he looked like in there. And this is a cartoon collection, and this is what you get. All right, so the third figure in this wave is Duke. So I like Duke. I'll go on record. I'm a Duke fan over Flint, and I'm a Duke Scarlet guy over Scarlet and Snake Eyes. So yeah, Duke. He's the golden boy of GI Joe, and I was pretty impressed with this figure. I really liked it. It really looked like the cartoon. I know the previous lines did try to make Duke-inspired cartoon figures, but they never came out right. This one, I think Super 7 nailed it. Especially, so he comes with two heads. So he's got the basic stoic face, and then this shouting face, and then one with a headgear. He comes with a helmet. I mean, this is the cartoon Duke, but he also comes with elements of the action figure one. So he's got a different rifle that came with the action figure. He's got the binoculars and the helmet. So display options. So yeah, I really like this Duke. I mean, even the shouting head. I remember the 25th anniversary tried to do a shouting head Duke, and it looked really awful. But this guy, he looks pretty cool. I mean, I think they pulled off the shouting head, and you got the Yo Joe. Now, problem here is, okay, so this guy took a tumble from my shelf, and unfortunately, he broke his leg. So, things happen, right? But nothing that some sticky tack can not take care of. I mean, again, I'm not going to have this guy in any major poses, so he just needs to stand up in front, look pretty, and shout, Yo Joe! And so, unfortunate, but yeah, that's Duke for you. And I guess it's a testament to maybe the not so great overall quality of the figures. But, what can you do? At least he still stands. But as great as Duke was, the star of the wave, the number one figure of the wave would have to be his counterpart in Cobra, and that would be Cobra Commander. So this is a no frills Cobra Commander, and he's just perfect. He was like my favorite toy of, when was this released? I only remember what year this was released, but he was one of my favorite toys of the year. As a counterpoint, at around this time, Classified had released their Cobra Commander. And, at this point, Classified was still into their modern, so their Cobra Commander was very detailed. It had a lot of extra details, which, I guess some people liked. I thought it was a little bit over the top. And so this back to basics Cobra Commander is just perfect. So it comes with this cape that's wired. It actually doesn't have any actual way of attaching to Cobra Commander, but it works. It just rests on his shoulders, and it's good enough for the display. Again, like everything, he comes with different accessories. He originally came with some Cobra binoculars, another rifle, 3 types of pistols that you can choose from, and a lot of hands. He had a scepter, which I've actually given to my retro Cobra Commander. So the Classified series eventually came up with their basic bare bones retro Cobra Commander, and so I went with that. This is pretty much the same thing, but better, bigger. And so yeah, in my opinion, he's the star of the wave. He's a no-nonsense Cobra Commander straight out of the cartoon. Okay, so the first wave of Ultimates was amazing in my book, and I was super excited and hyped for the second wave to show up. I was all in at this point. Unfortunately, the second wave was kind of like a step back, and we'll get to that later on. But first, the good. We have Destro. So again, one of the more highly anticipated characters for me. He would have been perfect. I think he's close to perfect. I mean, he's got that cartoon look with the green eyes. I mean, Destro was like, for me, one of the major stars of the first miniseries. Unfortunately, for me, I don't know, he looks a bit undersized. I mean, yes, I think he is technically taller, but his head, I don't know about you, but his head, it just looks
just looks smaller, right? Anyway, aside from that, he's almost close to perfect for me, and he comes with a lot of different head options,
a lot of weapons. I mean, he's the weapons manufacturer guy, so I have a picture of what he comes with over here. That being said, the second figure of this wave was the Baroness to match up with Destro, but in the first cartoon series, the Baroness had a very unique look, similar to Snake Eyes. I mean, she wasn't in her classic black look. She had just more predominantly blue. Well, here's a picture of it right here. And I was going to get it, but then as it was being released, they did announce, or I think Super 7 showed some renders of an upcoming wave where the classic, dark black-clad Baroness was a part of. And so I decided to just skip this one and wait for that. So yeah, for the Joes, this is where things kind of went downhill, right? So the first Joe we got was the Warrant Officer Flint. And he's decent. Okay, again, cartoon look, so he doesn't have the blacks. He was in a predominantly green deco, and so that's fine. The problem here is, see, I don't know if you noticed it, but in the first wave, when it came to, well, the only human face in the group, Duke, his face was actually painted, so it matches. It's a flat look, like what human skin should look like. It matches with his arm. But with Flint, and for the next figure, as you'll see, I guess Super 7, I don't know, they said it was a mistake. It was a hiccup in the production process. But I figured they just wanted to cut corners and hope we wouldn't notice. But yeah, so skin on the arms and on the neck is pretty par for the course, painted. But they did not paint the face. They just, molded it in a flesh-colored plastic and called it a day. So yeah, as you can see, there is a difference. It's shinier. I don't know. It just looks off. It just looks cheaper. And while on the shelf, yeah, I get it. It's not noticeable, but it's just unfortunate, right? It just takes a bit of the excitement off. And Flint, I think, is actually passable. It's worse on the last figure of the wave, Lady J. So this one I was really excited about as well, because Lady J really has a unique look that's different from her original action figure. And I don't know if you know this, but her character was created for the cartoon before an action figure was made. So there's that. But again, same thing, flesh paint on the arms and on the neck, but the face is not painted, and it just looks, it doesn't match, and it just looks off. I'll show a picture of what the renders look like. And she looked really good in the renders, but compared to this, I mean, I get it. They put a disclaimer saying the actual figure might differ a bit, but come on, this is like really off. And I just don't like how they made the eyes. Her eyes just look a little bit too small. I don't know. So very disappointing. But as disappointing as this one is, it's not the worst. We'll get to that later on. So yeah, Wave 2 of GI Joe Ultimates, step down, but still okay. So next up, we have Wave 3. And of the wave, I actually only got a couple of them out of the 4. Maybe my excitement was kind of like lessened by the unpainted faces of Wave 2. But yeah, I only decided to go for 2 figures out of the 4. So the first one, another must-have in any collection, and that would be the Ninja, Storm Shadow. So, I mean, it's a cartoon look, so it's very bare bones. I mean, not much details, but it works, right? I was pretty happy with it. One thing, so he came in the package hunched like this, and maybe it was the paint, but I didn't think it was articulated, and it really pissed me off. But after, finagling with it, eventually realized he could straighten up. But there isn't much to say about him. I mean, he's a must in every collection, and he comes with more weapons. Well, actually, no, this is pretty much it. He comes with Excalibur, which is pretty cool. That one episode where he wielded Excalibur. If you're wondering why the color's like this, it actually glows in the dark. Comes with multiple hands. He comes with a sniper rifle, which is kind of odd for a ninja, and a scuba mask, I guess, again, based on an episode, which I don't really remember. And these shurikens are they're not removable, but he does come with, shurikens. So yeah, Storm Shadow. And the other figure that I got from the wave, which was also non-negotiable. In fact, she was one of my most anticipated figures, because as a kid, she made up the triumvirate of my boyhood crushes that was rounded off by Teela from Masters of the Universe, Chitara from Thundercats, and Scarlet. So again, Scarlet was one of the most anticipated figures for me, and for the most part, I was pretty happy with it. And thankfully, the collectors called out Super 7 on them not painting the faces. So she came with a nicely painted face, albeit a bit angry looking. And yeah, this is nitpicking at this point, but kind of like her forehead is a bit too high.
She comes with other heads.
Could have come with a smiling face. Both heads look kind of stern. Comes with an M16, more hands, more arrow bits.
I actually had one here, but it kept falling off whenever she would fall from the display, and I figured I'd just keep them in storage because you could store them here, but again, they fall, you get lost, that's it. So yeah, as it is, Scarlet is
almost close to perfect. The problem is, I think she seems a bit too tall. I mean, compared to Duke.
Maybe it's her head. I think her hair makes her head look a bit bigger than it should.
Or Duke's head is too small, but she just looks a little bit oversized. I mean, they could have made the female body, and this is a problem with, again, oops, sorry, I just fell. Yeah, I think Lady J's about, I don't know, she just looks a little bit too big, and I just wish they made her a little bit smaller. But other than that, that's pretty much all she wrote for Wave 2. The other characters released in this wave were the basic Cobra Trooper, which I might get at some point. I have no plans of army building. But yeah, we got a Cobra Trooper and Doc. Not a big fan of Doc, so maybe one day I'll get him, but as of now, no rush. So that would be Wave 3. Wave 4, I was again all in because all the characters I needed in my collection. So the first one, probably the least exciting one, but again, another iconic character would be
Gung Ho, the Marine.
So in the cartoon, Gung Ho was more of a comedy relief. He wasn't like this gruff and scary Marine, and so his look reflects that. Well, again, cartoon, so it doesn't have that much detail. His vest, I joke, it looks like it was manufactured from a tablecloth. He has his signature grenade launcher, and he's got other heads. He's got a smiling head. He comes with like cartoon specific bits and pieces. Again, so this is Super 7. I don't know, maybe it's their way of trying to justify the high cost of their figures, but they just load them up with 10 million accessories that, you know, it's cute because a lot of them are obscure references to specific episodes like true fans would appreciate, but you know, it's just not necessary. For the most part, all these extra pieces just go into storage. So, you know, it was a bad model to start with, I think, this whole Ultimates thing. And right now they're doing with Thundercats, sorry, this is a bit of a rant, they're doing a deluxe line for retail, which basically is the Ultimates figures with like 1 or 2 accessories and that's it, at a cheaper price. And you know what? It's perfectly fine. But anyway, okay, so Gung Ho, the first figure, he's okay. Probably the least favorite of mine from this wave, but he's okay. Then we have the Cobra Mercenary Zartan. So this guy I was really excited about because again, Zartan, you know, I am more of a GI Joe fan, but you know, there are so many GI Joe characters and a lot less Cobra ones that the Cobra characters tend to be more iconic, I think. And so one of them would be Zartan. So Zartan would have been perfect in my book. And this guy, credit to Super 7, they made him out of the light reactive plastic. Now, so you put him out in the sun and he turns dark. Not really dark, but there is a change, so you know that works. My problem with this guy is that they sculpted him with like, I don't know, the neck was just too short. So I actually don't have the head snapped on securely to the neck. It's just resting there because I think if it's snapped on, it's just too short, right? And the head actually looks kind of small. But other than that, he's a pretty decent representation of Zartan. And again, he looks completely different from what we got in the classified line, which is perfectly fine. Again, cartoon line, so I can dig it. Then we have what I was waiting for. I skipped out on the first release of the Baroness for this one. The classic Black Baroness. So I think this is one of the best ones that they did, Super 7 did. And again, let's take these guys out. The problem is with their female figures, I think they're just too tall. I mean, next to Destro, no, okay, fine. Destro is noticeably larger, but again, his head, it just looks so small. But I guess, you know, with her hair, her windswept hair, which is pretty cool. It's a nice touch, her windswept hair. And I think they did the whole glasses thing pretty well, right? It's got character. I think this sculpt of Baroness has got a lot of character. She doesn't look that evil, but you know, that's just nitpicking. It comes with alternate heads, one that's not windswept, but I like this one.
and one with her Cobra Raptor helmet, and more useless accessories that we will just put in a storage bin and never see again.
That being said, can't complain. This is probably one of the better ones that they did for the line. And the last figure of the wave, a must in every GI Joe cartoon collection, is the OG Ranger,
Stalker. And I don't know, originally reviews of this guy weren't that glowing, but I don't know, he's my favorite. I really like him. And again, cartoon aesthetic, so his camouflage doesn't really look like camouflage. It's like he just like had some green paint spilled all over him. It's just like these random splotches. But whatever. He comes with this jetpack, which he often used a lot. He has that iconic scene in the opening, I think. Was it the opening intro where he flies up in the air and comes with a piece of dynamite, which he throws, and then he shoots. So yeah, I like this guy. I like his head sculpt. It's pretty intense. He's got your choice of rifles, but again, you need this pistol to shoot down the dynamite. So no complaints here. I really like this Stalker. Again, another must-have for any GI Joe lineup.
And then we have the final wave of GI Joe Super 7 Ultimates, wave 5, starting off with another major character, and that would be
Roadblock. So Roadblock, actually, was kind of like the
breakout star, or the new featured Joe in the second miniseries, The Revenge of Cobra. So he had a huge arc where he gets captured, but basically infiltrates Cobra. He kidnaps Cobra Commander, throws him to a bunch of soldiers, and he meets up with Duke and Snake Eyes. And well, basically, he's one of the main guys from that miniseries, and he became one of the most popular, especially because he rhymed when he spoke. It was quite memorable. A lot of people might not like it, but I thought they pulled it off. I mean, a lot better than they did with Wheelie. I just noticed he has orange pants, and Wheelie is orange. So is that coincidence on Hasbro's part? Dressing up the rhyming dudes in orange. But anyway, okay, so this is a pretty good, again, strong rendition of Roadblock for the Ultimates line. Can't complain. He's got everything you need. He's got his machine gun. He also has the generic rifle that the good guys used. And I can't complain. It's a solid figure. A lot better than the other guy, Gung Ho, who I see as the two giants of the line. And well, again, he was a character that you really needed for a cartoon-based GI Joe collection. So I'm glad that Super 7 got around him, and he's pretty decent. For the Cobra side, another long-awaited figure that I really wanted was Major Blood. See, of all the Cobra operatives, I think Major Blood is like one of the least appreciated. He was one of the more prominent Cobra agents in the early cartoons and the comics, but as soon as characters like Storm Shadow and I don't know, the Baroness and stuff, Zartan started becoming more popular and more prominent, this guy was kind of like shown the door, to the point that like in the Resolute series, he was, spoiler, like killed off screen in the first scene. But he was pretty much like one of the main bad guys of the show. And so I'm glad that Super 7 got around to him. And again, his cartoon look has a very distinct look as compared to the toy and the classified version. The classified version, when it was released, it was one of the most sought after and most expensive characters. Well, now I think they have a retro version, which makes it a lot easier to get. But I was quite happy to get this guy. He was like the last main character I needed for my cartoon Cobra collection. So Major Blood. And he's like Duke. He's got a screaming face for Cobra. He's got a laughing face and a stoic face and some bombs and stuff. And well, but this is basically all you need for Major Blood. They also released a Crimson Guard, which I haven't gotten around to getting it. I'm not really a big fan of the Crimson Guard, and stuff like that. But I did get the last figure of this wave, and I was actually kind of excited for this because I'm quite a fan. I mean, I like Scarlet, I like Lady J, but I really like this female a lot because I just feel like she's the most underrated of the bunch. And unfortunately, she came out the worst, Cover Girl. So this pretty much killed the excitement for me when it came to the GI Joe Ultimates line. I mean, okay, to be fair, by this point, I was basically all in, or I was all in on classified already. So the whole excitement of the Toon GI Joe thing kind of like was already tempered. But
this is pretty much the nail in the coffin for me. It's just such an awful figure. One, the face again. It's painted, but it doesn't look like freaking CoverGirl. I mean, again, I don't know what it is with the eyes. I don't know why they have to make them so slanted. She had big doe eyes. I mean, it's a cartoon. And again, here's the render so you can see. But more than that, there are so many more issues I have with this. Main one, of course, is the fact that, okay, so she has two looks in the cartoon. This is a cartoon-looking CoverGirl, and it's kind of like based on what she looked like in the toy with the brown jacket and stuff like that, and the bob cut. But in the first miniseries, she had a very distinct look, which I'll post here, which was a predominantly green look, and she had long blonde hair. And because this was a Toon, collection, I was hoping that Super 7 would release that one, especially since for their retro line, their reaction line, they did release the green blonde-haired CoverGirl. But for Ultimates, they didn't. They released this one. But the thing is, so here's what she came with. Look, so she comes with an extra head with long hair. That's red. It should be blonde. If they had just given us the long-haired blonde head, I would have been fine. But obviously, they had plans of re-releasing this figure as the green version with the blonde head. They just wanted us to, again, get this one first. So it kind of sucks. And it sucks even more because, well, we'll get to that later. But my main issue with this is, she's too tall. I just think she's too tall. I think Super 7 just, I don't know. I mean, she's a supermodel. Yeah, I get that. But, she's just too freaking tall. They just have an issue with their females. They should have sculpted them smaller. So, yeah, this really sucked for me, the worst figure of the bunch. Yeah, so the future of Super 7, I think, honestly, they announced a sixth wave of figures that were all repaints. You got a new Baroness, you got a new Scarlet, and you got a new Lady J that was based on the Deke series. But that didn't push through because, again, who cares about the Deke series? So they canceled that wave. And since then, we haven't heard anything. And, I don't know, for all intents and purposes, I think the line is dead. Super 7, a lot of their lines, they stopped a lot of their lines. I can have a whole rant video about how I feel Super 7 just really botched a lot of their Ultimates lines and stuff like that. But, another story for another time. But as far as the Ultimates GI Joe collection goes, I think that's it. And, honestly, I'm pretty okay. If that's the end, I'm pretty okay because I think what we got was good enough, right? For a decent looking cartoon display, right? I mean, they got enough of the major characters to make it look like enough that it doesn't look like it's lacking or anything. The good guys and the bad guys. I mean, sure, if they did release more figures, are there any other characters that are missing? Yeah, definitely. I would love to have a Shipwreck. Shipwreck was another major character from the cartoons. I would love to have Tomax and Zaymot for the bad guys. Dreadnoks is like a pipe dream, but I would have loved to have some Dreadnoks. At least the first original three. Buzzer, Ripper, and Torch. Other than that, I don't know. Are there any other characters from the that are specifically from the cartoon that we could use? Let me know in the comments below if there are, if you can think of any more. But as it is, I think this is it. This is it for the GI Joe Ultimates line, and I am pretty okay with that. Oops, Scarlet. Stand up, Scarlet. Once again, thanks for watching, and I hope you come back for more. Cobra!